first met Nickal at American Top Team and saw how he was every bit as good as people said he was. Masvidal may not be the best wrestler, but he does know when he sees one. And he saw one in Bo. But it's not just wrestling this guy's good at. Jorge said that Bo's got what it takes to compete for world championships, be it in wrestling or fighting like he is right now. And in Masvidal's words, he's killing it. I mean, if champs like Jorge are calling him a nightmare, then you know he's got what it takes. You better watch out, Gore, because you're really underestimating who you're up against here. But the thing is, Tresean is very confident after his first win in October 2022 at UFC Fight Night 213. He fought UFC pro fighter Josh Fremd and dominated him with what fans called a wild submission. This was super surprising since Gore was a massive underdog going into this fight, and by this I mean he only had a 20-something% chance at winning. Yet he still defied all odds and walked out with the W, and the way he did it makes the win even more insane. Gore choked Josh out cold just 40 seconds into the second round, and this wasn't just a regular choke. No, this was a crushing guillotine choke. Fremd was looking for a single leg takedown, but Gore was looking for his chances, and he latched onto his opponent's neck the second he saw it free. The finish looked extremely violent and all the more entertaining. It also helped Tresean clear his name, since his last loss against Cody Brundage in July 2022, who said that Gore lacked all-rounder skills. Brundage weighed in on his former opponent's skills and how he'd fare in any fight. Cody knocked Tresean out in their bout and said that his win simply came down to versatility. Tresean was underprepared, and he thought Cody would only wrestle, which, as his opponent later proved, was a big mistake. And if he underestimates Bo Nickal the same way, well, then he's definitely losing that matchup. Because if Tresean is super confident after only his first win in the UFC, he might want to remember that Nickal has 0 professional losses. And after his win in the UFC debut against Jamie Pickett, he's got all eyes on him. I mean, Bo certainly lived up to the hype at UFC 285 and showed everyone why he was the biggest favorite on the entire card, despite being his first fight. It didn't take him much work to beat Pickett either. All Bo needed was a single takedown to suffocate him on the ground, right before he pulled out a classic arm triangle choke, and all that in the first round. Yep, this fight didn't even last 3 minutes. Nickal was relentless and quick on his feet, and he isn't going to rest until he gets that belt and becomes the best fighter in his division. But that means he'll need to beat everyone in his way, which includes Tresean Gore, who agreed to fight Bo in April right after Nickal's debut win. And Mr. Vicious looks really hopeful here. He took his excitement to social media, writing that he said yes the minute he got the offer. Tresean said that he respected Nickal's wrestling skills, but this ain't a wrestling match, it's a UFC fight, and he plans on coming the best he's ever been. And that means handing Bo his first defeat in professional MMA. When he looks at Nickal, he doesn't see one of the best fresh fighters like most others do. All Gore sees is a guy that he's going to beat. Bo may have had a stellar wrestling career, but now he's in Tresean's territory, and Mr. Vicious says that his opponent's just going to have to take this L. This isn't to say that Gore isn't aware of the massive hype backing Bo and all the people who've been raving about him. He knows all that, but he also knows that he's simply better. He said that people are looking past him right now, but they'll know who's the boss here soon enough. His rival, on the other hand, couldn't disagree more. Bo's got 0 doubt about beating Tresean and says that he'll have no issue getting his opponent to the ground. He recently sat down for an interview where he talked about Gore potentially hoping to win the fight on his feet. But Bo doesn't think there's any way on earth that he could be stopped from taking Gore down. His opponent can defend himself all he wants, but Nickal will keep coming at him for as long as it takes until he's on the ground. Now, whether that's through a knockout or takedown can't be said, but if Nickal's gonna have any say in this, Tresean will not stand. And once Bo's got Mr. Vicious on the ground, he knows, in fact, we all know, that there's no way for him to get back up. He's held MMA guys down. Heck, he's held the best wrestlers in the world down. And he's been doing that since college. One Tresean Gore is no problem at all, and bettors seem to know that. While there haven't been any official odds or betting numbers about the July fight, some bookers have opened up, and safe to say, Nickal is the overwhelming favorite here. Aside from Cejudo and Masvidal, Bubba Jenkins seems to be on Nickal's side as well. A fellow wrestler turned MMA fighter himself, Bubba called Bo's first fight a very successful debut. He's confident that Nickal is going to be a huge fighter, but he's not going to be overconfident like Masvidal or Cejudo. For Jenkins, calling Bo a predestined world champion seems to be a very premature statement. He needs a lot more work before reaching that level. Bubba sees that Bo is confident and reminds him of how he was when he first started out. He doesn't want Nickal to rush for titles and all that this early in his career like he did. He wishes he had more people telling him to go slower, because getting to the top too quickly can be a great feeling, but the fall hurts way more. And if you want to sustain your peak, well, then you've got to work on seasoning yourself a little more. Then again, Nickal's fight against Gore is exactly that, some good old seasoning. And while Bubba hasn't predicted anything here, we all know who he's got his eyes on. After all, we don't hear him praising Gore the same way, do we? But there is one pro who has the same thing to say about both Bo and Tresean. Middleweight fighter Caio Borralho. The natural isn't impressed by either of these two fighters. Caio thinks that Bo is nothing more than an overrated trend. He's got too much hype around him. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. Hype. And Borralho hates hype. It never ends well for the fighters themselves. He compared Bo with Raul Rosas Jr. and the hype that surrounded him when he first came in, saying that he was going to master 3 divisions and all that, but what really happened? Rosas lost to a non-grappler in the grappling area. And Caio thinks that that's exactly what'll happen with Nickal too. He doesn't want to give the new fighter undue attention. He said that Bo can barely move on his feet and has a very ugly style. He's only fought unknowns before Pickett. And Caio reminded everyone that even Pickett wasn't in a great place when he fought Bo. I mean, he'd lost 4 out of his last 6 fights. Winning against him wasn't going to be a big deal or anything. For now, Borralho thinks that Nickal is just fooling himself, and the UFC is fully aiding him in that process, for God knows what reason. As for Mr. Vicious over here, Caio couldn't even care less. He said that Gore has lost 2 of his last 3 fights and is inexperienced as hell. But that also puts him right at Bo's level. Caio said that he's the low level of guy that Nickal should be fighting right now, and he doesn't care who wins. They're both bad, in his opinion, and this fight really carries 0 weight. So from Caio dissing both fighters, to stars like Triple C and Jorge Masvidal having Bo's back, this was what the MMA world thinks of Gore versus Nickal.